Now, so be careful what you say, the eye rolls, because it is on camera. It can't be deleted. So just make sure you be careful and cautious what you say. My name is Micah Hunt, your host with the most and the best dressed, not to brag at all. I am the host with the most, providing these virtual presentation Fridays. These are weekly, and we provide 1 free hour of CEU, nationally accredited CEUs, to our healthcare professionals, our executive directors, and our nurses, to just get some extra credits. We started this in May to kind of keep people connected, keep people engaged, keep people informed and educated of things going on, whether it's COVID related or just how to handle isolation and those different topics that we all have been striving for. And this group has really been a benefit to me, and I know to a lot of others. So I just want to thank you all for your support and continue to share these with other people. Don't be selfish and keeping this just for yourselves. Make sure you share with your friends, because everybody could use this, and these are national. So we do have people from all over the country and Canada that join in. So I would actually love to know where you're watching from today. So feel free to chat what city, state you're watching from, because I always enjoy seeing where people are joining us from, because virtual, it can be anywhere. So I'm really excited about that. So without further ado, we have our amazing speaker today, who is also our sponsor. So Michael Rethage will be talking first about Touchtown, as they are our exclusive sponsor for this presentation today and providing the CEUs for today. And then he'll go into his presentation. So now, without further ado, Michael, and now I will mute myself.
Thank you, Micah. And can we just pause? I can see some of you on video. Just give him a virtual round of applause. Micah is just the best, isn't he? Micah and I connected via LinkedIn not that long ago, and I can't thank him enough for having me here and having Touchtown be a sponsor. If you're not familiar with Touchtown, and I would love to hear from you if you are, because if you're from Pittsburgh, we got to get together at some point when the pandemic is over. But Touchtown is in Pittsburgh. We are a senior living engagement provider. We've been around for over 21 years, and we'd love to know if you are a Touchtown customer. If you're in Pittsburgh, please, I got the chat up. Would love to hear, and I'm seeing all your cities and states and where your communities. Love to see that. Thank you, all of you, for being here. But thank you to Micah. And just a quick spiel about Touchtown. We've been around again for 21 years. I actually have been with the company for about 6.5 years. I took over the company right at the beginning of the pandemic, actually. So my first company meeting as the leader of the company was to tell everyone to go work from home for 2 weeks, which is kind of laughable because here I am still at home, right? As many of you. But Touchtown is really kind of the leader in the engagement space. And we're going to talk a lot about engagement today. But we, of course, provide you a lot of tools. So everything from print calendars to digital signs. In-room television has been an enormous asset for senior living communities during the pandemic, providing entertainment. And of course, we have a full suite of apps products. We really like to focus on, of course, the resident. Of course, that's the basis of why we're all here, but providing communication tools to residents, staff, prospects, and family as well. So I'm not going to sell you on Touchtown today. That is not why I am here, but I would love for you all to go check out touchtown.com and see the wide range of products that we have. And of course, would love to talk to you afterwards. But that's enough about Touchtown. But a lot of what today's content is really about what we have seen in the marketplace, what we have seen from our 1,400 customers across the country, some in Canada, of course, for our Canadian friends that have joined us. We'd love to just kind of show you off what we can do, but that's a lot of the lessons learned today are from you, from customers of ours, people in the field, and how they're having success. So let's dive into it. Let me share my screen here. And then hopefully you can give me some nods that you can see this, right? Yeah, okay, great. So first and foremost, I have the chat up, and I see some of you. So thank you, Lucy. Say I use Touchtown. Thank you so much for that. And yes, community apps. That's still us. But thank you so much for using the chat. I really do want this to be interactive, right? So we're gonna be here for a little bit today. Let's make the most of it. I'd love to hear from you. Please, please, please stop me and ask a question. If I don't see in the chat, I've asked Micah to be my eyes and ears and really kind of pause me, because if there is a point in this presentation where you want to double click into something that I'm saying, I would love to elaborate. So I've got not a handful. I've got some slides here to show you. And I really hope that you learned something today, but please, please, please ask questions. I'd love to hear from you and interact with all of you, because that's why we're here, right? So today I'm going to talk about the top 5-ish ways that you can be successful with combating social isolation in your communities. And I'm trying to be a little bit funny there. I'll probably try to be funny today throughout this presentation, and it's not going to work. Micah is clearly more funny than me, but I'm going to try. But I tried to be cute here and say top 5-ish ways. This is actually a presentation that I did at the ICAA conference last week, I think it was. This week has, let's face it, felt like 3 years, right? Like since Tuesday. Something happened on Tuesday. I don't know. Well, actually, something didn't happen on Tuesday. We'll say that. But it just we're just waiting, and this week has felt forever. But ICAA is still going on, and so this is a presentation that I gave, but it was a truncated version, and we tried to elaborate on this. So I'm trying to be funny and say the top 5-ish ways, but I'm hoping it actually turns into like 10 ways that you can combat social isolation. So there'll be some bonus there. Again, just a little bit about me. I did not make this slide. I should say, if you read the bullet points, it says beloved systems guru. Our marketing person, Brittany, actually wrote this, so I would never write that about myself. But once again, my name is Mike Rethage. I'm the Senior Vice President and Head of Senior Living for Touchtown and our parent company, Uniguest. So what I, again, specialize in is engagement, running Touchtown, but we also acquired a company called VCTV about 2 months ago. So you might have heard them. They've been around for 30 years in the industry. And my background is really in operations. And as I mentioned, the last 6.5 years with Touchtown and really focused in senior living, but I also have done consulting in healthcare. I've even been a project manager for the nuclear Navy. So I've started 2 businesses in my earlier days. Actually, when I was 14, I started a disc jockey business, and I was DJing weddings before I could even drive to them. My dad would drive them, drop me off with a bunch of strangers drinking and having a good time. I played some music and come back. So I've got a wide variety in my background, but I really love the senior living industry. And again, really, really honored to be here. So I want to start by kind of laying some groundwork here of what I see here as we're kind of the foundation of what we're talking about, because there are, I think, 3 really keys, 3 big really keys to kind of recognize here, in that we all do differently. And I think this message here, if you take one thing away today, this message, as you apply and think about social isolation, in your communities, how it applies to people, I think you got to think of these 3 core areas, okay? And so one of which is how we all communicate differently. And let's think about how that has changed since the beginning of the pandemic. How many of you, and I can see some of you, show of hands, how many of you regularly use Zoom meetings prior to March? Okay, a couple of you, right? But not everybody. Everybody's doing that now. In fact, I love to play video chat roulette every day, where it's like every half hour I'm on a different platform. Microsoft Teams, Slack, Zoom, GoToMeeting, right? It's like if you don't have your bingo card filled up by the end of the day, it wasn't a good day, right? So we all communicate differently. But let's also think about this. Some of us prefer to write an email. Some of us prefer to text. Some of us prefer to video chat. And some of us, it's rare anymore, right? But some of us like to just pick up the phone and talk to somebody, right? And so we all are different in this way. Our audiences are all different. And the audience, right, is we're talking about combating socialization for our residents, but I'm going to talk a lot today how it's not just the resident. We need every part of our community to make an impact there. So again, I'm going to talk about this more, but when we all communicate differently, and I think that we all have to approach this recognizing that we're all different. We're all different, and we all can leverage that communication differently so that we reach every single person. Sometimes it's the same message, but just over different platforms, right? So it really is, I think, an important point. You're going to hear me, again, talk about these quite a bit as the presentation goes on. The next one is cope, right? We all cope differently. We all cope differently. Again, these are the 3 C's. But we communicate differently. We cope differently with the situation. I think the pandemic is, sadly, a perfect segue into this, because we all cope differently with this, right? Some people feel very comfortable wearing a mask. Some people feel very comfortable staying at home. Other people saying, man, I need to get out there. Some people that travel a lot say, I miss being on a plane. Our VP of sales, Nicole, I love her, but she has been telling me for since March, oh, I need to go see somebody. I miss the in-person interaction. We miss going to conferences, right? For those of you going to conference, Leading Age is in a couple of weeks, right? Or next week, right? It's virtual this year, but how many of you love to go to Leading Age National? It would be there next week, or would actually been this week, right? So it's a difference. We all cope differently with this, and I think it affects us all differently. So we need to take that into consideration as we push out communication. What is the reaction going to be, right? What is the reaction going to be, and how is that going to affect this person's mental state, physical state, whatever? How are they going to cope with this communication? I think that's a really, really key point in combating social isolation. So we're going to talk, again, more about these are some principles that we're going to talk about as we talk through how you solve this equation. I think it's good to have this foundation. And the last one here is consume. Right? We all communicate differently. We all cope differently. We all consume differently. We all consume differently. So think about this. There are stats online. If you use Facebook, if you use Instagram, that I've seen studies that show, and I'm not, don't hold me to these numbers, but when you go to Facebook, your engagement rate on a post is like 800% higher if you use video. 800%. And they even show that if you put the closed captioning on video, that increases the rate of engagement. Why? Because you're all at home, or you're all at work, or let's face it, on the toilet, right? Using social media, and you don't want to have your volume on. You're reading, right? And so you're reading. But if you posted all of that as just plain text, no one reads it. No one reads it, right? How many of you get an email and you see this long email and you say, man, I got to get a cup of coffee. I got to sit down and prepare myself to read through this. And how many of you remember all those things? But if you watch that same message in video, a lot of people consume that differently. They retain it differently, right? So I think the consumption of information has changed so much. And again, that applies to social isolation, because let's face it, if you're in a community and you're just handing out flyers, right? And you're saying, man, people are not coming to my activities. Why is that? Well, maybe it's how you're communicating that message. Maybe you're not tailoring your message to how your residents or how your audience wants to consume that message. So there is just so much there. There's so much there to unpack in terms of how people react to the news, how they cope to the news, how they consume the news just in general, right? And this week is just a perfect segue, right? With the election, some people say, I don't want to turn on the news. I don't want anything part of it, right? Some people say, I want to watch every second because I just can't wait to see what happens, right? And that's regardless of your political party, but you consume it differently. Some people would like to go and read the newspaper. Other people like to turn on the news. Other people like to go online for their news, right? So where are you distributing your information? Or do you have the distribution channels so that every single person can consume your information in the way they want, not the way you want to distribute it, but the way they want to consume it? So think about that, right? So those are the three C's that I want you to remember throughout this presentation, because remember, we do all those three C's differently. I'm going to give you a bonus fourth C that my wife says all the time. We all clean differently. She's a big fan of that. I don't clean the stove the same way she does, right? Those types of things. So we all clean differently too. That's your bonus fourth. All right, so let's get into it. So your residents are all ears, right? If they're all ears, you really have a captive audience, right? That can be viewed as a negative comment, but you do, right? People live in the community, and it's not just your residents. Your staff is captive too. They have to come into work. They have to maybe check a certain portal with certain information, or at least they should be, right? So how do you leverage that? Well, I think when it comes to social isolation, it is about communicating early, communicating often, right? The more messaging, the more transparency, we have seen that be successful in communities, and we have seen them react differently. They cope differently with the situation they're in, especially around the pandemic, because you had communicated early and often. And I think that is so critical in combating isolation, because if you're sitting there saying, I don't know what's going on in my community, in my room, in the room next to me, right? In the community around you, then yeah, of course you're going to feel isolated. That's just natural, right? It's just natural. So I really, 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 think that you should all look at this and say, okay, I've got this captive audience. How do I bring my messaging to them? What is the right distribution channel? Now, of course, I would say that's our business, right? Touchdown, that's our business. Bring that communication to you, and that's what we want to help people do every day. But there's a lot of simple ways to do it. There's no one-stop shop for everybody. Because remember, we all consume and communicate differently. There is no one single answer. You can't just say, I'm going to put in this one system and it's going to solve all my problems. No, that isn't how it works. You need to have a strategy around doing this. So communicate clearly and often is one piece of it. It is also about, as I mentioned, gathering feedback and ideas. How many of you push out something new and then iterate off of it? Think about that. How often do you make a decision and say, I'm going to have this program and it's going to start this day and I'm going to do it for 1 month? But do you course correct if no one shows up or half the people you expect show up? Or on the other end of the spectrum, if a lot of people show up, a lot of people engage, do you really kind of sit back and say, man, this is working or this isn't working, and how can I learn from that? We have so much data at our fingertips. Do we use it all for our advantage? And let's face it, data doesn't have to just be in a spreadsheet that you pull from a system and say, well, okay, this is my outcome. This is the chart. Okay, this shows me, look at this chart. This shows me this was successful. Okay, but we all have those anecdotal things in our life too, right? That say this was successful. I pushed out a message and I had 5 responses, five people stop in the hallway that wouldn't normally. How are you engaging those people on a regular basis? So, and how are you leveraging existing tech to do that, right? So do you have technology in your community? If you don't, you should, right? And I don't just say that as a technology vendor. You should, right? Because that's how people are consuming information. And do you have a strategy around that? You don't have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to do that. But what you do need is a strategy. You do need to start. You do need to start somewhere so you have some sort of strategy and say, okay, here, I have these distribution channels. I know I'd like to build to that shining city on the hill where I have all this tech and all this stuff. Great. It just takes time to get there. We get that, right? We get that. So, I'll pause there. I'm kind of scanning here. Any questions you guys may have on this particular theme? I think this is the first of the 5-ish ways, we'll say. And thank you, Karen, for the shout out. Awesome speaker. We're only a part of the way through, Karen, so you might hate it here in a few minutes. All right, so leveraging video. I mentioned this earlier. And yes, I agree, Peter. We love Micah. Micah's great. And kudos to him. He's even wearing a mask with no one around him. All the credit in the world, Micah. So leveraging video content is so critical right now. And just showing you stats from Touchdown System, because this is something I think you all can learn from. Do you have a way to distribute video in your community? Right? This helps combat social isolation, because let's face it, I could send you a notice that say, you have to wear a mask everywhere. You have to, right? And I read this and I say, okay, I have to read a mask everywhere. But there's no context, right? But what about an empathetic video? Because empathy is hard in the written word, right? Can you give a video on how to wear a mask, why you're wearing a mask, how it helps people around you, right? Those are keys that are critical, but would be lost in the 5 or 6 paragraphs you write down. Video is key. And we've been around for 21 years. I can tell you, we've seen a massive increase. You can see the stats there on video usage. And about every 3 to 4 days in our system now, we see as much video processed as all of 2019, right? That is there. That's for a reason, because people are turning to, they're turning to you to communicate really necessary things in the community, and they're turning to video because, as I mentioned before, that's what they're used to seeing. Let's face it, everyone watches TV. Why? What is TV? All video, right? So if you're just sending out emails, if you're just sending out flyers, if you're just sending written stuff, you're not catering to what people are doing most of the time. People watch tons of TV, right? So let's get to that medium. Let's show them how you can leverage video and really get the message out in your communities. That helps people, because again, empathy is key, but also seeing other people is key. That helps to combat social isolation. I'm going to get that word right eventually through this. I won't stumble through it. But social isolation, there, I did it again, right? You can combat it with video because it doesn't have to be a two-way chat, but it does help us to see somebody, right? Let's face it. this presentation, if you could not see me on your screen, you would likely be less engaged because you can't see me, right? But now you can see my face. You can see me walking around here. You can see me using my hands. My mother is a full Italian, 100%. I get my talkative nature and my hand motions from her, okay? So seeing that body language really helps. It really, really helps. And video can do that, all right? So, but video, there are so many things you can do in your community to augment what you are already doing. Okay, show of hands of those I can see you. How many of you work in a community where you have one or fewer activities focused people, right? So many communities have one person, right? One person that is, focused on activities, and they're burned out right now. Okay, so how can you augment that? Well, YouTube has millions of videos out there, millions, right? And what we're finding is people are using YouTube to also share great content that is out there that they don't have to create, but it augments their programming, okay? If you can share a YouTube video over your in-house channel, for example, right? And say, okay, instead of having a in-person activity or something at 10 a.m., we'd love for you to tune in and see this world-renowned chef, right? People love that, right? And it helps them feel engaged, right? And so, yeah, I see this, Judy, I think this is a great comment. I see a couple questions that I'll get to. But a lot of museums have been offering free streaming services as well. That is correct, right? That is absolutely correct. And you know what? One of the first things we did at Touchdown during the start of the pandemic was we put together a whole bunch of resources that I'll make sure we get it in the chat here of COVID-19 resources. Disney World, you can ride many of the Disney World rides virtually. You can see many of the, thank you, Brittany. You can see so many of the world's museums. You can stand on so many of the bridges of the world, right, virtually. So take advantage of that. And yes, I agree. It's hard if you don't have an in-house channel. Of course, that's somebody we want to talk to at Touchdown. But there are other ways, right? Just think about it. Even if you have a few computers in your community that people can come to, using tablets, right? But also, people love to just come together socially distant with a big screen and walk through some of that together, right? There are ways to still come together socially distant in your communities, but using technology in a centralized area. Maybe you just share one screen and say, hey guys, let's ride 5 rides at Disney together, right? And watch that video. Everybody ever seen that video of the little baby that's in the laundry basket and they're going up the roller coaster with the dad and they're kind of, that's a great video, right? That's a perfect video that people love to share over their in-house channel. Just like something that's more, it's fun and engaging. In fact, we have communities that just share nothing but funny pet videos, because who doesn't love funny pet videos, right? It's so engaging. It's okay. Like, okay, try not to just go down this rabbit hole of going on YouTube, search for a few funny pet videos and then not watch like 30 in a row. And then you're like, oh, okay, I just wasted like a half hour of my life, but I'm not mad about it, right? So there are just so many things that you can engage with, right, on YouTube. Cooking classes, exercise classes, right? There's so many senior-friendly exercise classes out there that are free. If you're not leveraging those, even in your own life. So let's say you don't have zero pieces of tech in your community. You, as administrators, as workers in those communities, can get great ideas from YouTube, and they're just a search away. And in fact, I do encourage you to check out the link that Brittany just put in the chat. There's some great resources there, and we at Touchdown want to continue to provide those. So please check that out. But I want to answer some of these questions. Can you advise for some smaller communities that don't have tech? I think that goes back to, can you get a TV in a common area we can plug a laptop into and bring people together? Can you get one tablet that you can share that experience? I think there are so many low cost, I would say beyond Touchdown, there are ways to provide low cost tech too. And I would also encourage you to check out partnerships with local high schools and other organizations that they want to bring in people to do that, right? And share those experiences, because even combating isolation, oh man, I'm going to get it, right? Social isolation is all about partnerships, bringing people beyond just your voice, right? And so getting people to help with that. Can other people use this that are not in the community, who live at home or just independent living places? No. In fact, what I always love to talk about is your communities have some great resources, right? And I actually think there's a huge revenue opportunity for, especially post-pandemic, bringing in people that are aging in place, living at home, Why have a YMCA membership when you can use the community pool, right? Or the community gym? It's an extra revenue stream. But also take your programming to them. So again, things like apps, live streaming. Touchdown has a proprietary live stream service where we say, hey, if you have a yoga class or an activity, you can stream it to people at home using an app or using tech. There are lots of solutions out there. Please don't think this as I'm pushing Touchdown. I'm just telling you there are services out there that are fairly low cost that can allow you to do that and reach people that are aging in place and bring that community inside, right? That virtual community inside to you. Do we just assume if it's on YouTube, we are free to broadcast it in-house? Yes, you are allowed. It is public content. If it's on the internet, you can do that. The movies are a bit different. I won't go down that path too much because it's a more of a slippery slope. You can broadcast movies, but there's some other challenges there. But YouTube content is available and you can use it. Yes, you can. All right, so I'm going to move on. I'm doing a lot of talking. Thank you for the questions, though. And by the way, copyrighted items on YouTube generally will not be shareable. Like, for example, like our system is designed that if it's not shareable, you can't stream it. So there's some built-in protections there for you. But yes, I agree with you. Be careful and educate yourself. And use if you have questions about that, please reach out to me afterwards. I'd be glad to talk through it with you. So I'm going to go into the next point, though. Employee connection is so key, right? So if your employees are not on the same page as you in terms of how we combat this issue of social isolation, then you're going to have a problem, right? Employees are the key to pushing everything forward in your communities. You all know that you are those employees, but getting your peers around you to buy in, right? If you launch technology, if your staff isn't engaged with that project, it's going to fail. It's not going to work because you think your residents just going to pick it up without having staff engagement, having staff walk you through and say, yeah, this is important. This is how you're going to get this information. It's not going to work, right? So I do really encourage you to focus on the employee engagement. And you don't necessarily need tech to do that, right? Employee engagement, let's face it, excuse me, this industry has a problem with turnover. They do. And it's around 41%, I think industry average last year. I've talked with communities, large organizations, that's 50% or higher. That's a lot of employees. How do we keep them at your community and working well? Well, it is about engagement with them too. They can feel isolated as an employee. How do you, it's not just about, relaying HR procedures and new policies, but it is about thank you. It is about gratitude. It is about sharing great stories in the mission, right? We're all here to help each other and help the residents. Are you sharing that message with your employees? Are you sharing success stories? I hear so many success stories in these communities. And I'm like, why am I hearing about it before your employees, right? Why am I hearing about it as a vendor and you're not blasting this message out to your employees? We had just a quick story, a customer of ours who did this fantastic program where they were granting like kind of a wish for a lucky resident. And that resident wanted to be a flight attendant for a day. And it was just a fantastic story. It was actually like a couple years ago. And I remember seeing this video, and we were talking to this customer and said, man, you really need to get this out to your employees. And they're like, we haven't shown, we were thinking about this kind of like externally, but I said, no. This is a fantastic story of why you are on the same mission together and you're pushing forward and you're helping your residents. This is how you put this in your staff break rooms, put a digital sign in the break room, show it, have everything there, right? So that they can see the message, the good that you're doing, but then also have a message from your leadership. How often are your employees seeing your leadership? Is that happening in your community? If not, it should be, and it should be done via video because again, video conveys empathy. It's the communication platform everyone wants, right? So staff meetings are great, but people roll their eyes at staff meetings. Let's face it, they want to see video. If you're not doing Zoom videos and to engage people that you maybe are seeing on a third shift, you got to bring those people into it. So employee connection is key. It's going to drive. It really is going to drive better relationships with the residents if you can communicate your mission, right? Communicate your mission and also new things that are happening in the community, like using tech, right? I think that is so critical to everyone's buy-in. So do more with less, right? So how many of you are part of an entity where you have sister communities, right? Can you share resources? Can people flip back and forth? We even have a video platform that allows you to, we call it the video concierge, where you can have centralized staff that works multiple communities. Are you shaking up the staffing model to do more with less? And it doesn't mean cuts, right? That doesn't mean we have fewer people. You just have more specialized people, getting the people that are on the ground to spend their time forming relationships, not doing paperwork, not answering questions that they shouldn't. Can you direct things operationally to the right people? And sometimes those people don't have to be in the community. So that the people that are there can focus on, again, being better at their jobs at the community. That is, I think, really, really key to helping, right? Combat social isolation. Because the more relationships we have, staff to resident, resident to resident, family to resident, which we're going to talk to a lot, right? That is so, so critical to helping people feel better about the world around them, okay? So it really does start with staff. So, of course, picking partners with your best interest in mind. Of course, we always want people to pick Touchdown. There's no doubt about that. We want that, right? But that's not the point of today. There are some other great partners out there, Aspire 100, Cora Health, One Day University. Some of these folks are even providing free content during the pandemic. And we have it in our system. I know these folks very well. But there's more to that, right? So these are some great partners, and I know. Thank you, Judy, for the great link there about copywriting and free activities I did. There's tons of that stuff out there, but look to even the paid vendors that have some great content that you can leverage. These are great partners, and honestly, many of them offer really great subscription service for not that much money, right? It really is not. It's achievable for many communities, and so I do encourage you to look for that, and then incorporate your feedback. Are people responding to this content you're putting out there? And this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? These are three. There's so many out there, and how are they reducing your manual work? Again, augmentation. Can you augment your activities with maybe one virtual, two virtual? Oh, thank you, Karen. Go Steelers, 7-0. Yes, I love that comment. Sorry to see you go, Karen, but go Steelers, of course, from Pittsburgh. So are you augmenting your activities list with things from these vendors, free materials, YouTube videos, right? Again, if you have a day's worth of activities, yeah, it is exhausting. I know, I get that. Okay, but can you make 2 or 3 of those virtual? Again, that goes back to that theme of we all consume differently. Some people want to sit in their room a little bit, right? We want to get them out of the room. I know that. I'm not saying, hey, keep everyone in the rooms, but are we delivering content to where they are? There are other ways to do that. So remember, we consume, we cope, we communicate differently. Are we achieving that through different distribution channels? But pick your partners wisely, ones that have your best interest in mind. I gotta say, I love the Feet to the Fire Writers Workshops. Are you providing some purpose here, right? So it's one thing to sit there and just consume all day, right? Veg out, watch TV, watch different videos. Yeah, I think that's a great portion of your activities, and I think it does help with social isolation because I got it that time. Because you're putting those videos and they can consume them. I can learn something new, right? The funny pet videos provide something, some humor, right? But we also need to provide some purpose. And I think the Feet to the Fire Writers Workshops, I think, are really great because they provide this outlet for people to write. And some people, let's face it, we all consume, we all communicate differently. Some people love to write. Some people like to just consume, right? So providing those different avenues, these are workshops that you can run, that you should run. And it doesn't just have to be that. You know, Touchdown was sponsoring an art program, I think it was last month, where we give you a prompt and here are the tools you'll need, right? And go out and do the art project and then share it with each other, right? Same thing with writing, okay? Here's a writing prompt, go write and let's share it with each other. Let's have that discussion. Goodnight Zoom, I love this program where you can sign up. I have 2 young kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. You can probably hear them downstairs. It's manic downstairs. But Goodnight Zoom allows people like me with young kids to connect with older adults that are wherever, right? And they'll read them a bedtime story. I love this program. If you don't know about this program, please Google it, Goodnight Zoom. I think it's goodnightzoom.com, I think. But go check it out because it provides purpose. It provides purpose. If you have residents that are looking for something to do, I tell you what, I've got 2 kids that would love to listen to them read a story. Definitely, right? So, please take advantage of these type of programs that are out there and honestly free, right? They're free. So you can take advantage of this. And again, think about partnerships, get creative. Is there a high school? Is there an elementary school? Is there a daycare in your local community that you can partner up with? And now virtually, right? We don't have to bring a whole bunch of sneezy kids into the community. We can do it virtually. And you know what? The teacher is going to say, I'd love to give you a half hour of story time because that helps me fill my day. So it's dual purpose, right? It's helping out. So that helps to provide social isolation. The problem there is really kind of a lack of community, right? And so can we bring community, virtual or not, to you, right? Some of these ideas are community within the community. Some of it is external. And there's all sorts of ways to still be responsible and leverage the tech. Zoom is free, right? But it's the partnerships that are also free that you have to kind of go after. So a little bit of time and effort can go a long way here. All right, so we talked about staff. We talked about residents. We talked about a lot of things here. You're probably sick of hearing me speak. But families, right? Families are so important. Are you providing the tools to connect the families with your communities? That earlier message I made about communicating often and clearly, right? That applies to the families as well. Because we all know if the family's in the dark, the resident is going to be as well, right? Are you providing the tools so that the family member knows what's to eat, and what is going on around the community? So when they call mom or dad, they say, hey, did you participate in that really cool cooking class video? Did you see that? That's really cool. I mean, it's in the app. Here it is. Did you know, they can show them how to do that. And guess what? Now you have this ambassador, right? You have this ambassador. You get them using the tech. You get them using the app and seeing the scheduled activities or the live stream and saying, wow, look at all these really cool activities that mom or dad can participate in. Guess what they're going to talk about in their next phone call? That's going to hopefully prompt another phone call to mom or dad, right? Again, another connection point, right? So do you have the tech? Do you have the resources to, provide that to your family and then encourage them virtually or not, right? So I know some of you are opened up and you can allow family members in safely, but are you encouraging them to make those connections? Because if those connections aren't there, yeah, of course the mom or dad is going to feel isolated, of course, right? So how are we encouraging them differently to engage with you and your community? It's not just about them calling mom or dad, but it is about you communicating with the families. And let's face it, some residents don't want Big Brother there. They don't want their that kind of role reversal of the son or daughter now being the parent and saying, all right, don't tell me what to do. You don't have to monitor me 24/7, right? Some people don't want that. But it is about you communicating what is available and encouraging them to say, hey, here's what's available. This is what you can encourage mom or dad, right, in your next conversation. There's sometimes that helps, right? So having a clear strategy on how you're communicating to families, and I know I've heard from many communities where that has shifted dramatically because you used to see those family members more, maybe on a regular basis for pre-COVID where they were coming in for visits, and now you're not seeing them as much, right? So what's your strategy? How are you communicating with them? Because that is going to affect your residents dramatically, really dramatically. I love also, by the way, the window visits and the hug walls. I know many of you are already doing those things, but I thought it was a really good piece to add in here because there are ways, again, for quarantine purposes, totally get that. You got to be safe, but there are ways, I think, to really engage people. And if you haven't checked out Eversound, by the way, a great vendor that provides hearing, listening devices, right? So if you do have in-person visits, through Windows, you can provide listening devices. And again, you feel differently when you get to see your loved ones. You feel differently, of course, when you can hug them, but you feel differently if you can just see them. Are you providing those avenues to your communities? And tech can really, really help that. It really can. All right. So I'm getting to the home stretch here. Then we'll get to really some questions. Listening devices like the old time drive-ins. I love that, Lucy. That's exactly the concept, right? Are you providing those pathways there? Accessibility is so key. It's so key, right? So it kind of goes back to this point I made earlier, and I want to hammer it home. Okay, yeah, we consume, we cope, and we communicate differently. Are you providing those different accessibility mechanisms for your community, right? For your residents, for your staff, for your family, and oh, by the way, your prospects, right? You engage them more at the earlier stages, they're going to be more likely to use some of those tools. But we always say, like, hey, use when you have a prospect, get them to download the app before they leave that consultation, that tour, because they're more likely to use it. They're more likely to use it when they're a resident. Okay. So, but are you providing all those different avenues? I get it that sometimes these things are out of reach for your community. You say, well, I've got 30 beds, I've got 50 beds, we can't afford some of this. Well, I'd like to differ. Like we want to work with all. We want to make tech accessible for all. But I get there's budget constraints. But are you really looking through and saying, do I have a strategy to meet the needs of everybody? Or are you just saying, no, I can't do it. I'm walking away, right? I don't got a strategy. I know I can't do it. Well, I'd like for you to revisit that. I would love for you to revisit that and say, yes, I would like a strategy. I would like to see what is possible and how do I get this done? Because you do need a variety of accessibility to make this successful. Again, going back to the earlier point I made, if you are purely just sending out one form of communication, you are missing the boat, right? When we send out a blast email to our audience, we've got, I don't know, 20,000 emails. We'll just make this up, right? If we get a 3% open rate, we're really excited about that. If we get a 10% open rate, we're just jumping for joy, right? And it's the same thing with like, direct mail, right? The rates are even lower, right? People toss things in the trash. So email, yeah, you can get higher engagement if you have, then you're going to really play with subject lines and everything. But okay, let's face it. If you've got one strategy, it's not enough. You gotta diversify. You gotta have visuals. You gotta have audio. You gotta have video. You have to have a strategy of how you're going to communicate. I really do encourage you, take a piece of paper, okay? Think about, draw a couple columns, residents, staff, family, prospects. And now let's look here and say, okay, what is my strategy for each one of these? How am I communicating for each one of these? Sit there right now. Well, actually, after I'm done talking. But sit there after I'm done talking, okay? And I want you to do this exercise. Put the columns there and say, okay, how am I communicating with my family members? Write down email, print, video, right? Or, emails can contain videos, by the way. YouTube is free. You can put a private video out there, link it into an email, right? Vidyard is another tool I encourage you to check out. It allows you to grab a video very easily in your browser, drop it into an email. It's a fantastic engagement tool. It's free, right? Are you using these types of tools? Are you familiar with these types of tools? I get it. It's overwhelming, right? It really is overwhelming how many tools are out there. Find a partner that can help you. You're all doing a great thing being here today, listening, educating yourselves. I know you get some credit for it, right? But that's good, right? Hopefully you take something out of this. You go investigate one of these tools. But sit there with those columns and say, what is my strategy for these different audiences? What am I doing to reach them? And, if you have a blank column, or if you have a column that has one or two things, maybe it's time to rethink it. Maybe it's time to get creative and reach those people differently so that you have kind of a full grid. I'm saying, yeah, I have a strategy for family. I have a strategy for residents. I have a strategy for prospects and family, right? Do you have something in each one of those categories? I think is really, really key. Really, really key. What was the tool Mike just mentioned, the pop-up video? Vidyard. There's actually a variety of tools, but Vidyard is free, Vidyard. I know Brittany Barr, who is our marketing guru, I knew it. I knew she would have the link up there in seconds. She is way better than me, by the way. She helped me prepare all this, so big kudos to Brittany. Thank you. She helps keep me sane and on task, really. So yes, Peter, I use Vidyard. Yes, everyone should. Thank you, Peter. I love your background. You should use Vidyard. You should drop it in. The engagement, think about this, okay? You record a Vidyard, and you have, we have little whiteboards at Touchdown. And so when I could send you a video and say, hi, Peter, looking forward to talking to you, send you a message, and you say, okay, great. I don't know who this guy is, drop it in there. I could send you an email, and there's a screenshot of the video. It's super easy to do with Vidyard. And in that screenshot, the first second of the video, I'm smiling, and I have a whiteboard that says, hi, Peter, right? I'm like this, right? You're going to say, who is this Mike guy? And why did he send me this customized video? I got to click on this. I got to see what this is, right? I guarantee your engagement will go up. Think about that the next time you're sending an email to your family members, if that's how you choose to engage with them. Use Vidyard and say, look, we're trying something new, right? Don't write an email, just say, hi, family, here's a notice from our executive director. Here's one line, right? And then paste in that Vidyard video and see what the engagement is, because you can actually see if people are watching it after the fact. Those are the type of free tools you need in your community to engage people. And then you have stats, right? You can have stats. Did somebody actually open this? Did they engage it? Keep your video short, to the point. Unlike me, I tend to ramble. I use my hands a lot, right? Keep it short, to the point. And, I really do think it will help you engage your audience. But again, accessibility is so key. We're kind of hammering this theme home of we need many, many different channels, and distribution efforts for these different audiences. because again, we all communicate, we all consume, we all cope with the news differently, right? And video, again, allows you with that empathy. You can actually see somebody. It's just much different. So of course, I have to say, you got to have a strategy for your tech, right? Social isolation won't be cured, right? I'm not going to have this magic pill and you say, hey, you use this vendor, use this vendor. No, it is a combination. And I think a key here, there's two words on this slide that I want to point out: non-interactive versus interactive. Some of your communities, if you called me and said, Mike, I'm really interested in Touchtown, really want to understand, we're going to say, hey, what kind of community do you have, right? Is non-interactive or interactive communication right for you? Sometimes apps are not right, right? It's just not for your resident audience. It might be perfect for your family, it might be perfect for your staff, right? But it may not be. I think we need to be honest with each other about what is right. Don't pay for something you're not going to use. But what is your strategy? What type of tools do you want to give people, right? And hey, we've seen the stats. We see them every day. A lot of staff members don't have email addresses. How are you communicating? When I talked with a community, said, well, the only way we communicate with our staff members is putting a little insert into their paycheck. I said, okay. So when you get your paycheck, don't you think you're just going to take the pay stub out and throw the rest of it away? Right? I mean, come on. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. But can we create another tech resource for them that they need to go in there to punch in their clock, right? Punch in and punch out. And you have some other information there. You can message them. It comes up in their cell phone. Ding, 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 like a text message, right? You gotta find different ways. And let's face it, generations communicate differently too, right? You go to a younger generation, they might want you to text. They might not want you to phone to give them a call. But other generations would much rather prefer a phone call. And get out of your comfort zone a little bit, people, right? Just because you like to be consumed one way or you like to communicate one way does not mean that all the rest of your employees will want to do the same way. So you got to get out of your comfort zone. In fact, it's a quick story, and then I'm going to wrap up. I had an employee years ago that, you know what, we had these one-on-ones. She was disgruntled, and I'd say, okay, it wasn't my fault, of course. No, she loved me. No, I'm just kidding. But, she just had challenges with her role, right? And I could tell when we would have one-on-ones, you know what, she wouldn't, kind of just break it out of her, right? And to try to create that comfort zone. But you know what, I said, you know what, hey, let's pause this conversation. Here's a couple of things I want you to think about. I would love for you to email me over the next couple of days of what you think, right? So you have some time to think about it, and then we'll come back to it. You know what, and then we exchange 5 or 6 emails back and forth, and we get to a great place, right? And you know what, for me, I like to tackle things head on. I'd much rather have a conversation with somebody. Brittany will tell you, I love to have video chats with people, especially right now. Phone calls, I like to see your face. But you know what, some people just say like, okay, Mike, get away from me, right? I want to just like think through, because maybe your mind's moving 1,000 miles a minute, but not me. I need to really sit down and think about it. Again, it goes back to we all communicate, we all consume, we all cope differently. You got to reach your audience. Some people like to be interactive. Some people like to be passive. Do you have the tech? Do you have the tools to meet all those needs? All right, so that's it for me. I'm going to open up for some questions. I got the note here from Mike. I would start wrapping up, Mike. Thank you, Mike. No, I appreciate that. You got to keep me on task. But I would really like to hear your questions. Feel free to chat or take yourself off mute and ask a question. And by and large, I hope you got something out of this today. I really do. I really appreciate all of you being here. And again, I want to give a special thank you to Micah for having me here today, because it's been really a joy. So I'll leave it at that. Any questions? I'd love to see your chat, or again, take yourself off mute.
And Michael, if you don't mind, thank you for this presentation. It was very informative, beneficial, and it gave us some food for thought to think about how to use, visual and digital and different aspects, for how we do our communities and our activities. So I really appreciate the input that you provided. So yes, if anybody has any questions, if you're not sharing your screen, raise your hand. There's a cool little icon on the bottom of your screen that you can digitally raise your hand, or share your screen and raise your hand. That'd be greatly appreciated. Or if you just want to chat, that'd be great too. Does anybody have any questions thus far? I know Cheryl Slavinsky usually always has something. I think I heard somebody.
No, the first question was, can you pronounce social isolation? All right, I did it. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
Does anybody have any questions? So, I had one, and it was, what was it on? It was, you were talking about the different resources as far as free virtual aspects. So what are some of the things that, people can look for that will be most beneficial in that aspect?
Yeah, so I really do encourage you to check out the link that Brittany put in the chat here with some great resources, because there are some really, really cool free resources. But here's the thing. Ask your residents, what are they interested in, right? I mentioned the Disney rides. Do they care? All right. Do they care about something like that? Would they be fun? Would that be fun for them? You could pull it and say, hey, I have a night where it's like, hey, we're going to go. I've seen this. People say, we're going to go explore X city. We're going to go explore the Eiffel Tower, Paris, right? Google Maps will allow you to go to that street view and kind of experience that and kind of look through it. And do you have some prompts when you get the people together in a room and kind of walk through that to engage them further, right? Hey, how many of you have been here? How many of you have seen this? Have you ever been to a place like this, right? And ask them, like, if you were in Paris, what would you want to do? Oh, I would like to, have wine. I would like to have the cheese. I'd like to do, right? You can have a conversation, and you can have a complete activity kind of wrapped up into something that is, relatively simple, right? Or you could have a Google Street View of people's homes, right? Like, let's go to your childhood home. What's the address? Let's type in and see if the Google Street View is there, right? Let's go see what that looks like. Hey, let's talk about some memories there. Let's get people together, right? It's about prompts and allowing, free tools to augment that. So again, Google Maps is free. I just gave you a couple ideas that are completely free to you. To answer your question though, Micah, YouTube is a great resource. I really do encourage you to check that out. But I would also look for those helpers out right there. That the Mr. Rogers analogy, look for the helpers. There's a lot of great vendors out there, and I love what Brittany and the team here at Touchdown have done about putting that resource guide together with free stuff. But look for the museums. Look for the nonprofits out there that are really, again, zoos, right? I was actually amazed how many zoos out there have virtual tours of their zoo and live cameras to see the animals. People love that. I do. I love being able to. One of the best things that my kids and I do every day is ask. I won't say Google, right? I've got my Google Home thing here. It'll go off just like Alexa. But ask for the animal of the day, right? Because it teaches you about a new animal. There's so many free resources out there that I really do encourage you to check out.
Cheryl, you came unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, both of you, Micah, for hosting these, and Michael for doing this. But I've said to Micah before that I learned something in every one of these, even if it's not, what your intent is. You're talking about communities and activities today. You gave me a lot to think about just in general communication, like trying to break through the clutter to get people to just listen, to listen to what I have to help you. It's really hard with coronavirus. I tell people say, well, why wouldn't people want to do that? It's like, because they're busy saving lives, praying that nobody else gets sick. And so you gave me a lot to think about as far as communication. I think I just need to go do a video, Mike, a big surprise.
Well, thank you for that. I love that. Thank you.
And then Ann Wellifer just gave a thumbs up to that. Does anybody else have any questions at all for Michael? You will receive an email. Those of you that are regulars on this call, you will receive an email from me in regards to Michael's contact information. As well as recording from this video. And those that are requiring and looking for CEUs, you'll get a link to the CEUs to take a survey, and then you'll put in your national registration number, and then you'll receive your certification and updates on that within 30 days. Because I am doing a lot of these, and they're kind of getting bombarded with all that. So please be patient with the return of your certification. So yes, so that's what you'll be getting after this. So please look forward for my email. Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask Michael? You do have the expert right here. So please ask a question if you'd like to. Yes, Mikhail, you will get the email after this call, as long as I have the correct email. And I do believe I do. So does anybody else have any other questions?
Oh, come on, something.
Okay. Well, but Michael, they probably will bombard you over the weekend with emails. So that's what it is. So just be ready for that. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to stop recording. So then